Your hand is doing something right now that no other hand on the planet can do, not the gripping, not the opposable thumb. The blood vessels just beneath your skin, flushing heat to the surface the moment another person looks at you in a particular way. You have probably done it today, maybe at a meeting, maybe reading something you shouldn't have been reading, maybe when someone said your name. You felt the heat rise before you even understood why. And here's the part that should have been obvious the whole time but isn't. Every other animal that has ever been studied, from every primate alive today to every mammal with a circulatory system close enough to ours to compare. None of them do this, not when embarrassed, not when caught, not when ashamed. The blush belongs, as far as anyone can determine, entirely to us. Which raises a question nobody has managed to fully answer, not for lack of trying. A man named Charles Darwin spent years genuinely puzzled by it. He called blushing the most peculiar and most human of all expressions. He had a theory for almost everything else. He could explain the sneer and the sob and the way a dog lowers its ears before it submits, but blushing defeated him. He couldn't find the mechanism. He couldn't find the purpose. In his 1872 book on emotional expression, he devoted an entire chapter to it and ended, essentially, confused. A blush starts in the brain, not in the face. When you perceive a social threat, being watched, being judged, being caught in a mistake, a region involved in self. Monitoring sends a signal. The signal travels through the sympathetic nervous system and the capillaries in your face, neck, and ears, which respond to this system differently than capillaries elsewhere in your body dilate. More blood moves closer to the surface, more heat escapes. The color appears in seconds, sometimes faster. Here is what is strange about that pathway. The capillaries in your cheeks are not unusual in isolation. The same vasodilation happens in your legs when you run. The same mechanism flushes your chest when you are too warm, but those responses are triggered by physical demand. They serve an obvious function. They cool you down. They deliver oxygen. The blush delivers nothing. It makes you hotter when you are already under stress. It makes you more visible when your instinct is to disappear. Every other stress response in your body is moving towards something useful. The blush appears to move in the opposite direction. That involuntary quality is not incidental. It is the whole thing. You can fake a smile. You can flatten your voice. You can control your hands. The face you present to the world is, in most situations, a performance you direct. But the blush overrides that entirely. It runs on a track your conscious mind cannot access. When researchers at the University of Queensland in the 1990s showed participants video of themselves blushing, the participants reported feeling more embarrassed watching the footage than they had in the original moment. Seeing proof that their body had acted without permission made it worse. That involuntary quality is the key to something, and what it unlocked took researchers a long time to see. The first real experimental grip on blushing came from a Dutch psychologist named Peter de Jong at the University of Groningen in the early 2000s. He had noticed something in the existing literature that didn't fit the assumption that blushing was purely a social liability. He set up an experiment where participants either blushed visibly or didn't after making a social mistake. Then he had observers, strangers who had watched the mistake happen, rate how they felt about the person who made it. The participants who blushed were rated as more trustworthy, more likable, more likely to be forgiven. The ones who didn't blush were rated as suspicious, cold, the kind of person you should probably watch. The observers couldn't explain why. They just felt it. Something was happening at a level below explicit reasoning. The blush was being read as evidence of something, and that evidence was changing how strangers decided to treat a person who had just failed in front of them. What the blush was evidencing was the thing that could be faked. You can apologize without meaning it. You can say the right words in the right order and produce no feeling at all. Language is a system with enough flexibility to carry deception inside fluency, but the blush predates language, or at least predates the kind of deliberate control we have over it. It is a signal that runs beneath the ability to perform. When your face flushes, you are not saying, "I am embarrassed." You are demonstrating it involuntarily in real time to everyone in the room. And that distinction between a signal you can manipulate and one you cannot is the whole difference between information and noise in social communication. Here is where the argument gets harder to accept. The standard reading of blushing as social currency, that it buys forgiveness, that it communicates genuine accountability, rests on the assumption that the signal is always honest. But honesty in biological signaling is only stable when it cannot be cheaply imitated. And the blush cannot be imitated. That is precisely what makes it expensive. So the working hypothesis by the mid-2000s looked like this. Blushing persisted because in social groups where everyone can see your face, the ability to display involuntary shame was worth something. It showed the group that you understood the rule you had broken. It showed that the social contract was still operating inside you. It functioned as a kind of real-time audit of your moral processing, until someone looked at what happens when people blush who haven't broken any rule. You have blushed when complimented, when someone sang happy birthday to you and the whole table turned in your direction. When you were praised in a meeting for something you did alone and now had to absorb the fact of being seen receiving that praise. You did nothing wrong. There was nothing to be guilty about, but your face flushed anyway. This is called positive attention blushing, and it is documented across cultures, and it doesn't fit cleanly into the social repair framework. Because there is nothing to repair, the group's trust in you is not threatened. No rule has been broken, and yet the involuntary signal fires. What is the signal actually tracking, if not guilt? The better answer, and the one that researchers like Karine Dietrich at the University of Amsterdam began developing in papers published between 2009 and 2012, is that the blush is not a response to moral failure. It is a response to a particular kind of visibility. The kind where the attention of others is concentrated on you in a way you did not choose and cannot manage. The rule violation triggers it because rule violations produce exactly that kind of visibility, but so does unexpected praise. So does being the center of a room. The common element is not guilt. It is exposure, and exposure is precisely what makes human social life different from what every other primate manages. We live with our reputations, not just with the people in the immediate group, with people who have never met us but who have heard about us, with people who will form opinions of us based on second-hand reports that we will never be able to correct in real time. We have always cared more than any other animal seems to about what people who are not present think of us. That kind of social world requires a very specific problem to be solved. You need to be able to demonstrate to the people who are watching that you are the kind of person who takes that watching seriously, that when you do wrong, you know it, that when you are seen, you feel it. The blush is that demonstration delivered in a medium that cannot be counterfeited. Let that sit for a moment because it seems to settle things. But something still doesn't close. If blushing evolved as a signal of trustworthiness, it should work best when it is seen. And most of the time, it is seen. The face is the most social surface of the body, but people also blush alone. In dark rooms reading old emails, remembering conversations from years ago that no one else was part of. De Jong noticed this and called it one of the genuinely strange features of the response. A signal that no one is receiving is, by definition, not communicating anything, it is just heat, and yet the mechanism fires anyway, as if the body is not waiting to confirm that an audience is present. Some researchers have suggested this is simply a design artifact, that the signal pathway cannot distinguish between real social observation and imagined social observation, and the brain imagines observers constantly, so the blush fires at the thought alone. Others have argued it means the blush is not primarily a communication tool at all, but a self-monitoring mechanism, something that regulates your own sense of social standing whether or not anyone is watching. What both readings share is the assumption that the core engine is the same, some mechanism that tracks how a social mind relates to the fact of being perceived. And that mechanism is, as far as current evidence shows, ours, not ours as modern humans in complex societies, ours as a lineage, the specific vasodilatory response to social exposure, governed by this particular branch of the autonomic nervous system operating on this particular timeline, producing visible color in a species with the facial skin and musculature to display it clearly. This configuration has not been convincingly documented anywhere else. Which leaves open a question Darwin could not answer and nobody since has closed. Whether we blush because we evolved in social conditions that made the signal valuable, or whether the peculiar social conditions we live in were partly built around the fact that we could not hide. Your face announces things your mind hasn't finished deciding. That is either the price of living with other people, or it is the reason living with them became possible. Every other animal manages its social world without this. The chimpanzee that breaks rank does not flush. The wolf that submits does so with its posture, not its blood vessels. The signal of deference is performed, and performance can be recalled. You cannot recall a blush. The warmth you feel right now, remembering the last time it happened to you, is the same mechanism that has been running your entire life. It has been announcing you to rooms before you found the words. It has been offering evidence about you that you never consented to release. And every person who has watched it happen to someone else has read it, accurately in about the same amount of time it takes to notice. You were never hiding as well as you thought.